Gonzalez,
Here.
Lopez,
Here.
Burns,
Here.
Stites, Kane, Burrows.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Clerk, are there any revisions to the agenda this evening?
We are removing items 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8.
Thank you. Just for the public's knowledge, we are rescinding items 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8 on tonight's agenda. Okay. Committee, we have no minutes to approve, so we'll move right on to our committee agenda. We have a few action items this evening. So the first item up is item 4.1. It's the Kansas Department of Corrections Adult Year-End Report. And I would recognize Phil Lockman from our Community Corrections Department for a presentation and remarks. Mr. Lockman.
Good evening. I'm Phil Lockman with the Department of Community Corrections. Each year, the Kansas Department of Corrections requires local agency plan end-of-year reports for both adult and juvenile. Yeah, a little closer there. For both adult and juvenile programs. I'll start off with the adult program. And these are just basically goals and objectives that have been set out in consultation with the Department of Corrections. This year, on the adult side, the report merely goes through and recounts the trainings that we had set out to do for our staff, and also what's called MRT programs for adult offenders, which is moral recognition therapy, which is another type of cognitive education program. We've completed all of them, and that's pretty much the report, just the different things that we set out to do with the training, and we just report back to DOC that we've completed them.
Questions or comments, committee? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk if there are any comments received from the public.
There are no comments received.
Anybody online from the public who wishes to make a comment?
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. I will ask, is there anyone appearing in person who would like to address this item? Let the record show no one stepped forward. Committee, I would now entertain a motion for approval of the report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval, recognizing the report. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Kane, Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you. Committee, Mr. Lockman's going to present the second part of the report, which is dealing with the Juvenile Services Program. Mr. Lockman, please.
Yes, the Phil Lockman, Department of Community Corrections. On the juvenile side, we receive money not only for our case management and intensive supervision for juveniles, but also included the Juvenile Intake and Assessment Center that's managed through the Sheriff's Department is also included. So they also have a small bit on this. The JIAC on our agency end-of-year report, they had a lot of struggles this year, and a lot of that's just because of staffing. They just have trouble keeping staff in there. And so that a lot of their areas still, they're going to have to work on getting together with the offenders and their parents and trying to contact the parents. That's also another problem, because kids that are brought into the center, they have trouble contacting the parents. But everything else is going A-OK at the JIAC Center. Besides that, on the ISP programming and the case management, it all deals with training and our use of an intake specialist to help identify and target individual youth and their parents for specific services, and everything is on track there, as well as the trainings. Really emphasizing our cognitive education program with the youth and trying to get them and their parents involved in working towards correcting the behavior of the youth.
Okay. Mr. Burns?
Phil, the problem with keeping employees is because of the pay or what?
You'd probably have to talk to the sheriff's department about that. Mary Pollock's their director, but I think one of the things that they've always struggled with is that the intake and assessment center is a 24/7 operation. And the positions that they have that perform a lot of the intakes are real basic, low-level entry positions. And I think trying to keep those positions staffed with people, because I think what generally you find in corrections and those kinds of positions are that the people that come into those are either working on finishing a college degree or have one, and it's kind of, they see it as a stepping stone job. And we've even actually hired some of their staff as probation officers, but it's always been that way. But one thing that we do is with our staff acts as backup from community corrections, our juvenile officers, and they go in and backfill and help them cover those shifts when they don't have enough people. And I think that's been that's worked out really well to help cover that.
Thanks, Phil.
This is just for my own information, Mary Gonzalez. I don't know what age group is considered juvenile.
Well,
Like how young?
generally speaking, 14 to, we can keep them till 20, 21 and into the system, but that doesn't happen a whole lot anymore, except for the higher risk kids that are actually placed at the correctional facility. But the majority of these kids are 14 to 18. Now, the intake and assessment center, though, is a little different because it's an emergency processing system. So a lot of the law enforcement, when they bump into kids in homes because parents are being arrested or they find kids that are unaccompanied, then they're brought there and they can have babies brought in. And that's another hard part of the JIAC, is trying to get a baby into placement in the middle of the night. And sometimes, they even have to transport them to Wichita and other towns to find foster care, to temporary emergency foster care.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Lockman, a question, if I may. In the report, it talks about parents' involvement in this, and I see in the report, at times there's been difficulty reaching parents to get their input and involvement within the juvenile process. Are there steps in place that can assist in that? Do you send somebody to the home? Do you send a registered letter? Anything along those lines to ensure that we get parental involvement and they understand the responsibility they have, not only as a parent, but to the community?
Yeah, I think they do both. It's the thing is that when these youth, especially unaccompanied youth that are picked up or arrested, or they're just located and the police have concerns, just trying to find out where they live sometime is very hard, because a lot of these youth, the homes are changed quite frequently, the location. And then if you don't have both parents in the home, it makes it even harder. But that's one of the things I think in juvenile justice is the hardest thing, is trying to get parental engagement, because sometimes they're just very tired. They could be doing the best they can and they've just been worn down. But then other times you have parents that are completely absent and non-involved. And that's the ones I think a lot of times they have trouble really working with. But that's always been a long-term issue with juveniles in the system, and they do a really good job of trying to contact the parents and get them out, because we're under time constraints with the court process and things like that.
I would assume that when a juvenile is being addressed, that there is a contact form for and/or parent, a close relative, some kind of intake information that is given so that those individuals are responsible for that juvenile, or that juvenile is responsible to, has some form of contact information. Is that not part of the process, and just not having success in reaching him, even with that?
Well, like I said, you end up with some families in some really dire circumstances.
Yeah, speak up a little bit.
Where they're not even, you end up with some kids that are in some real dire situations with family, whether they're not there. And that's to try to find people and the kids, because sometimes a lot of times these kids are picked up not at home, but somewhere else. And so to try to get a hold of the parent, like I said, it's just a running problem, but.
Okay. Commissioner Lopez?
Lopez District 6. Hey, so there is an organization or nonprofit over in the Turner area called Full Throttle that deals with some juveniles and whatnot. Do you know about that program?
Yeah, that, at least on, and this is a separate grant called I believe it's on the Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board grant. They are one of the recipients of money this year because they were brand new starting. I believe it's boxing and
Mm-hmm.
athletics. And so they just got funded on that starting July 1st. And I haven't heard back how that's going, but I know that they're a new startup. But they are funded through the juvenile grant, and I can't think off the top of my head how much money, but we had about 5 recipients this year of that juvenile corrections grant.
And I guess if they have a record of some sort, the PALs won't take them in.
Well, historically, the Police Athletic League doesn't work with kids that are currently justice involved. And I think there's some legitimate reasons for that because, they have a more global viewpoint of the youth that they want to have involved and the kind of kids that are in our system sometimes can just suck the oxygen out of the room because their risks and their needs are so high that they can consume an inordinate amount of resources and time where that time could be more easily spread over a multitude of youth that are just in the community that they're targeting. And that's one of the reasons why we have that Full Throttle and the other programs is that they're referral sources for us. And so we can get the kids into that and hopefully, get them involved in what we in the system call pro-social activities. It's not drugs and smoking cigarettes out on the street corner and committing crimes. It's trying to get them involved in activities that help normalize their behavior and build self-esteem and confidence, but also, these programs act as a resource for the parents too to help manage the kids in the home.
Cool beans.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk if there were any comments received from the public.
No comments received.
Thank you. I'll now ask the clerk if there are anyone online who wishes to make a comment in reference to this subject.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. Is there anyone appearing in person here this evening that would like to address this item? Let the record show no one stepped forward. Committee, I would now entertain a motion for approval of the information presented.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Committee, that takes us to our third item for this evening. It's the ordinance of the crime of battery against a healthcare provider to the Unified Government Code of Ordinances. I would ask that I will recognize Sherry Courtney from our legal department for the presentation and remarks. Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you. This is to add the crime of battery against a healthcare provider to the Unified Government Code of Ordinances. Under current ordinances, battery is a Class B misdemeanor unless the victim falls within the definition of law enforcement officer or school employee, in which case it's a Class A misdemeanor. In 2023, the Kansas legislature added healthcare providers to the battery state statute as a Class A person misdemeanor, and so this simply adds that crime to the Code of Ordinances.
Sherry, I want to make sure I understood. Is this a healthcare provider, like a nurse or a doctor, or is this somebody from our health department or our public safety responders? Can you narrow this down for me? It just says healthcare provider.
Yes, in subsection C, it's defined the same way as the state statute. So it's an individual who is licensed, registered, certified, or otherwise authorized by the state of Kansas to provide healthcare services in the state.
Okay,
So it could be a unified government employee if they fall within that licensure certification requirement. Or it could be someone employed elsewhere who is a healthcare provider that meets those requirements.
does that include mental health care?
So there is a separate subsection in the state statute that applies to mental health care workers. And I believe that makes that crime a felony under the state statute. So I don't know. Under the state statute, battery against a mental health employee is a battery against a mental health employee by a person, well, okay, I'm sorry. So that only applies to offenders who are in the custody of the Secretary for Aging and Disability Services. So
We can get clarification if it's not inclusive, we can get clarification for that when it comes before the full commission. If we know for sure, I just want to ensure that if we're asked that we have an absolute answer. If it involves our mental health, when it comes to healthcare, I think mental health is one of those things that are becoming a common service within the service of healthcare. Even first responders are dealing with mental health.
right, I think that answer would depend on how they are licensed.
Okay.
So if the mental health worker is licensed, registered, certified, or otherwise authorized to provide healthcare services, then I think they would fall under this definition. If their licensure certification is different than that, then they may just fall under the regular battery statute
Okay.
or ordinance.
Committee, any questions? Any comments? Okay, I'll ask the clerk if there are any comments received from the public.
No comments were received.
I'll ask clerk if anyone from the public wishes to make a comment that's online.
There are no hands raised.
Is there anyone here this evening that would like to address this item? Come forward. Let the record show no one stepped forward. Committee, I would now entertain a motion on the ordinance of crime of battery against a healthcare provider to the Unified Government Code of Ordinances.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Kane. Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. The next item is an item that has been asked to come before us a year ago. So this item is the ordinance of violation of unlawful camping to the Unified Government Code of Ordinances to promote public health and safety. I know many of us have received emails and texts regarding this ordinance. But I believe council is here, and we do have members of the police department, public works, others that are here. And I appreciate, Casey, that you've lined that up so they would be here. Thank you. So with that, I'd recognize Casey Meyer of our legal department for presentation and remarks.
Thank you. So you see several of our UG staff here because several of our UG staff are impacted by this and are the ones that actually do the work in enforcement. So they are going to be here to address any of your questions related to that. I am here obviously to go over the legal issues and the ordinance. Just to provide a little background, as Commissioner Burrows said, I was asked to explore some options to address some issues that have impacted the public health and safety of various areas within the city. We already had a loitering ordinance for a significant period of time. In 2024, the Supreme Court made a decision on an often cited case called Grants Pass, which basically made it legally easier for cities to enforce unlawful camping ordinances as long as we comply with our constitutional obligations, of course. And it's important to note the Supreme Court in that case primarily addressed the Eighth Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment and determined that it was not a violation of the Eighth Amendment to enforce anti-camping ordinances through fines and citations and arrests. And it's also important to be cognizant of the fact that due process still exists, of course. Fourth Amendment rights still exist. Everybody still has their constitutional rights. So when drafting the ordinance, all those factors were taken into consideration to meet the needs of both the city in protecting the public, as well as ensuring that we make sure we stay within the law when we do that. And this is, if you look at Wichita, Topeka, Lawrence has one as well, but if you look at Wichita and Topeka's ordinances, this draft is very, very similar to theirs. Very similar, in fact, to Wichita's. I obviously amended it to be consistent with our needs, but that's where the starting off point for this one was. So the definition of camp includes the following. It's fairly broad. I want to make sure that we understand that the ordinance doesn't apply to a specific class of people. It only addresses conduct, right? So this is going to apply to any person in violation of the unlawful camping ordinance. The flood control is in there because you'll see later where we prohibit unlawful camping. Camping is going to include areas where there are systems for flood walls, levees, pump stations, etc. Personal property, my slide got messed up, so I'm just going to read you the definition. Personal property means any and all tangible property and includes, but is not limited to, goods, materials, buckets, furniture, merchandise, tents, tarpaulins, bedding, sleeping bags, huts, lean-tos, hammocks, personal items such as luggage, backpacks, clothing, wagons, trailers, shopping carts, truck campers, documents and medication, and other household items, or any other shelter or structure. That definition, again, is consistent with most cities' definitions of personal property, not just in Kansas, but municipalities that have ordinances such as this across the country. Public property includes any publicly owned property, including but not limited to our streets, sidewalks, alleys, golf courses, bike paths, walking trails, parks, parking lots, etc. And I just want to highlight the fact that public property doesn't just mean city-owned property. It's a little broader than that, right? So it's property that would include public access or property owned by the state or federal government. Public right-of-way means the entire width of the area from property line to property line, including all area intended, designed, or used for vehicular or pedestrian traffic, and the area between the roadway and the abutting private property line. For the purposes of this section, that area shall include but not be limited to the area and the portion of the property between the sidewalk to the curb, whether such area is paved or unpaved. All those definitions are obviously relevant because that's how we know how we're going to enforce our ordinance. First section addresses unlawful camping on public property. We address the fact that it's unlawful and a public nuisance for any person to camp in or upon any public property or public right-of-way unless such person or persons have been granted a temporary permit by the unified government. I want to note here that obviously that language I included to make sure we weren't conflicting with any other section of our unified government code. And so as far as examples of that, when that would be happening, I'm not sure. I kind of think never, but I don't know. Regarding the 48-hour notice, the 48-hour notice is required under due process. Not the specific time of 48 hours, but in my research, most municipalities are somewhere in that 72-hour to 24-hour range. And so I included 48 hours because I think that is a manageable time frame for both our staff and it falls within the law as far as enforcement against the person that is in violation of the code. Section 2, any person may be cited with violating this section if the individual refuses to leave and or remove all personal property within the period contained in the notice, or if the individual has previously been provided notice that camping in such area is prohibited. So the intent there is if it's this person's first time and we have an officer or whoever is in charge of enforcing this comes up to them, hey, you're not allowed to sleep here, you need to leave and remove your belongings. If they do that, that's not the type of person that's going to be cited here. If they refuse, well then citing under the ordinance after 48 hours would be appropriate. Or if they had previous notice that they were not supposed to be camping there, then they could cite under this ordinance. I also want to note that one difference between our ordinance and Wichita and some other ordinance is they included an exception for a citation if there was no shelter space available. Wichita has a shelter available 24/7. We do not have a shelter available 24/7 in our area. However, the law doesn't require that cities provide shelter in a certain way or a certain time period. So in some of the feedback, when I was drafting this ordinance, I shared it with all of our internal departments and I needed their feedback. And one of the issues was, given that we don't have a shelter available all the time, that section is going to be very difficult to track and enforce. So, and I agree, that was basically not a possibility for us. So that's a factor for the committee to consider. But just know I did consider that. And so that is not included in our ordinance. So I'm going to move on to section C. These are times when immediate removal might be appropriate for someone in violation of this section. So obviously immediate removal, we don't give them the 48 hours notice. If they are in or under bridges, overpasses, and or highways, within 50 feet of any bus shelter, median, roadway, highway, traffic circle, roundabout, etc., within 20 feet of any doorway, loading dock, elevator, stairway, or fire escape located on public or private property, any land deemed dangerous by virtue of contamination, any land used for flood control, which I previously defined, within 500 feet of any playground equipment, school, or childcare facility, whether such playground equipment, school, or childcare facility is located on public or private property, within 500 feet of any public or private swimming pool or public or private golf course, or inside or within 50 feet of a public restroom. That's kind of a lengthy list of locations, but again, that is pretty consistent with what a lot of municipalities across the nation includes in their ordinances. Again, a person may be cited for violation of this section if the individual camps in any area in violation of this section and refuses to leave and or immediately remove all of their personal property from the area and or has previously been provided notice that camping in such area is prohibited. Section D, we address unlawful camping on private property. So unless such person is the owner, lessee, licensee, or tenant of such property, it's unlawful and a public nuisance for any person to camp on private property. It is unlawful and a public nuisance for any person to camp or sleep on private property in any of the following places without written permission of the owner or person entitled to possession. Such permission must include the name, address, and phone number of the person giving such authorization. And then it lists how to do that. A lot of issues, when you walk through the city, you don't necessarily know it's private property, right, or public property. If an owner hasn't given you permission, and law enforcement or whoever might find an encampment partially on private property, well, this would require that they, if asked, they would need to know right then. They would need to provide whether or not they had permission right then. And I would expect in most situations, they do not have permission. If they do have permission, well then, okay, that's different, but they're still going to have to comply with the rest of our code. And I know that our staff can give some examples of maybe some people providing permission to people on their private property, but then violates the code. And so those people can still be removed through that process or this ordinance as well. Okay. Continuing section D. A person may be cited for violation of this section if the individual camps or sleeps in any place in violation of this section and the individual refuses to leave or remove all their personal property. The individual has previously been provided notice that camping in the area is prohibited and or the area contains clearly visible signage stating that the property is private or that no trespassing is allowed on the property. And then subsection 5 is the part that makes sure that even if a property owner has given permission, they still have to comply with the rest of our ordinance and our code. Section E. So a big issue obviously is not just the individual that has been camping. If they leave, they may leave behind a whole bunch of personal property, which is what is usually the material in the encampment that our staff has to clean up. And I know that that's costly and time consuming. So it shall be unlawful for any person to fail to remove personal property located on our property as described in these sections after 48 hours of receiving notice. So that just applies to the sections where we have to give 48 hours of notice. If it's not removed, then we may impound it in accordance with below. In the event personal property poses an immediate threat to the health or safety of the public, it may be removed without prior notice and discarded. Immediate threat would include, but not be limited to, property that has been tainted with blood or other bodily fluids, feces, urine, bedbugs, fleas, or other pests, soiled, wet, or mildewed, or property that blocks the ingress and egress to buildings, sidewalks, bike paths, walking trails, or walkways. Obviously, evidence of a crime or contraband may be removed without prior notice. And then personal property may be immediately removed without prior notice for those violations in the prior section that talks about immediate removal. Notice prior to removal. This is another one of those due process requirements. So when we provide notice, our 48 hours notice, this is how we do that. We're going to provide a statement that personal property is to be removed, the location, date, and time the notice was posted, a description of the items to be removed, and I'm envisioning this to be general, but specific enough that someone could identify what you're talking about. A statement that the personal property will be discarded or impounded if not removed within 48 hours. A statement that moving personal property to another area shall not be considered to be removing personal property as required by the notice. Contact information and location where a person may retrieve impounded personal property. Contact information for available homeless outreach services, which the city does have. And a statement that impounded personal property may be discarded or otherwise disposed of if not claimed within 30 days after impoundment. So one of the issues for impoundment is I spoke with both the police department and sheriff's office, because, the sheriff's office has jurisdiction over our parks, is space in their property room. Well, if you look at the exceptions for when items will be discarded, many of the items, it's my understanding, would ordinarily fall under that section. And so those items would not be impounded. Types of items that would be impounded would be like an individual's medication, personal identification documents, something like that. And so those items would presumably not take up much space in the property rooms of the police department or the sheriff's office. And the time period for which one would have to recover those items is limited to 30 days. I want to point out the 30 days because in many cities, it's kind of a range. They give 30 days as an impoundment period. Several of them also give 90 days. But again, as long as we provide notice, we're following due process, and 30 days should be sufficient, and it's legal. So that is another consideration. If the committee thinks 30 days is too short, well, just let me know and I can amend it. Okay. So section 2, following removal of personal property without prior notice, a notice consistent with those facts above will be provided and posted in a visible location on the property from which the personal property was removed. Disposition. Subsection G, like I kind of just mentioned, personal identifiable property such as identification documents and medication shall be impounded as personal property and retained by the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department or Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office for 30 days. If they are soiled, have been exposed to elements, or of a de minimis monetary value, they shall be destroyed. The property site, including personal property, should be photographed prior to removal by the UG employee or other person authorized by the UG to remove or impound such property. The UG shall maintain a record of the items removed from the campsite, the date any personal property was impounded, released, discarded, and/or disposed of. And then subsection 4 addresses how that owner is able to retain their personal property if it's been impounded. Subsection H just included the departments that most regularly enforce our current encampments. Subsection I know that we do issue temporary camping permits, and so I didn't want to draft an ordinance that nullified that option. And so again, this section is just in here so I don't conflict with other sections of our code. Subsection J is the violation penalty section. So any person who is convicted of a violation of any of the provisions of this chapter shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be punished by a fine not to exceed $200 or by imprisonment for not more than 30 days, or by both such fine and imprisonment. If the court determines that the person is indigent, the court may, in its discretion, order that such person, in lieu of the payment of any fine imposed and/or court costs, be allowed to perform public service to satisfy the payment of such fine and/or costs. And the court shall make a finding of indigency and shall not note the same upon the court disposition sheet if they determine that that's appropriate. And then, of course, in addition to our criminal penalties, we are always able to institute our civil actions to abate a public nuisance if we need to. K is just our savings clause to make sure that we can use multiple ways to address these issues. And same with L, JJKL. I have to say the alphabet aloud in my head to make sure I'm not missing something. Okay, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them, and so is our staff.
Committee, before we start with questions, we do have those that are representing the departments that was suggested they be here in case there were any questions coming forward. So do any members of the committee have questions or comments? Okay, Commissioner Lopez.
The section, remember what it was, there was like 500 feet, a couple of them were 500 feet, 50 feet from a doorway.
Right.
Yeah. Is that state law or can we bump them up to 1,000 feet?
That's not a state law. That is, again, based on my research on what is kind of a reasonable, if you go out too far, then you're kind of excluding the entirety of the city. But that is fairly consistent with what most municipalities have in their ordinances, if they include provisions like that. Some of them don't include prohibitions against feet or doorways. I would say about a quarter of them do. So,
And then what if there is a camper in a driveway and an individual is living out of the camper in the driveway? The people that live in the house don't own the house, they're squatting at the house. So how does that fall in?
right, that would be a violation. And Pat, do you want to address that one?
Patrick Holton, property maintenance compliance. That would fall under Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances. That's an unfit structure and would be addressed through our administrative process that way.
Is that like a 48-hour notice or is that just a?
Generally, when anything is posted unfit, we give 2 weeks, but we have to have a hearing within 30 days. So our hearings are on Thursdays, so we generally are 2 weeks and then the following Thursday for a hearing on those matters.
Commissioner King.
What other municipalities are doing this?
Well, in Kansas, I would say Lawrence, Wichita, Topeka are the ones that amended or updated the ordinance after grants passed, made it slightly more aggressive. Across the nation, several municipalities, I have a lengthy list. I should have made a slide, but several have, after the Supreme Court made their decision and grants passed, kind of amended their ordinances to make them a little bit more aggressive in enforcement. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Any other questions or comments? Casey, I sincerely appreciate the effort you put into this. This ordinance was requested a while back from members of the community in reference to some of the issues that they were observing, but what they don't see is the cost of the unified government through the fire department, EMS, Public Works, the Health Department, the monies that are spent in overtime to address some of the issues that we find. The drug paraphernalia that's left in our parks, the continued decline of our community through actions that have been taken by those that are transient community. So I really do appreciate the effort you put in to be as fair as we can with this, but still have the public and the UG's interest to preserve the authority that you all have to enforce an ordinance. And I know that this is not an easy subject matter. Businesses all along the community, all throughout the community, especially all along our downtown corridor, have been asking for this for quite a while. And I know all of you see it, but what we don't see and the public doesn't see is the truckloads of trash, the illegal products, the bodily fluids that are sprayed, dumped, and littered throughout the doorways that are mentioned in this ordinance. And I do appreciate you picking that up. This is an issue that has long been needing to be addressed. I don't know if there's a part of this community that hasn't been affected at one time or another by a transient population that we're dealing with in this community. I wish that if we were a utopian community, we have the resources available for these individuals to seek the services they need during times of need, but we don't. But that doesn't keep us from having to take care of the general public and at the same time preserve the safety and property of our local unified government and our neighborhoods. So again, Casey, I appreciate you taking the time to walk through what was in the ordinance. And this ordinance is not new to just Wyandotte County, as one of the commissioners asked. The subject matter has been studied throughout the state of Kansas, so, and through the Supreme Court. So I do appreciate that opportunity. Committee, any other comments? Commissioner Burns?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that we hear from the police department about their opinion.
We actually, since we started seeing the whole uptick of the homeless, we created the homeless outreach. We've done the city ID program to try to help our transient population not be transient. We see the effects that it's having on our community and enforcement. We actually have been asking for some time to our legal, hey, how do we handle this? Now they're giving a guidelines. When I've had to move homeless encampments off of public property, we didn't have anything to go off of to show, to keep us within Constitution and everything. So we were giving them a lot longer to vacate, and probably will still give them enough time. That way they have a way to get all their property off and no excuse why they haven't. So this has given us a guideline to follow to actually how to address some of these problems, because we've heard things like, well, loitering doesn't apply to ABC. Well, it doesn't cover all of our problems. So we have to have other ordinances that cover some of these problems that are being presented to us. Otherwise, what do you say to your constituents and your public that's saying, hey, why aren't you taking care of us? We don't have a way we can. Our hands were being tied. So this gives us another tool to help us do our jobs and hopefully make sure that everybody's being taken care of appropriately. We're not violating their rights because we just don't know what we can or can't do. So it helps give us guidance.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, do you have an opinion?
Well, Bill, I just think overall, the commission and the community, like Commissioner Burrows stated, have been asking for something to be done. So overall, I do think this is good for our community. So I'm glad that Casey spent the time to go through and bring this to you guys to get it voted on. The only thing I want to add that Officer Joyce stated that this kind of does speed up the time in some arena for us to address certain areas. But just for staffing levels, I just want to put it out there, it may not result in sometimes when we get these calls that we can act as quickly getting cleaned up. Shad's here with our abatement team, and we have roughly 5 abatements that are still kind of pending for cleanup of homeless camps. So I just want to make sure that even though that we have this set in place, it is still staffing levels sometimes that may take time to get addressed, cleaned up. But otherwise, I think this is good.
Well, in District 2, there's a lot of transient, and I hope you can address it as quickly as possible. And I know it's throughout the county. I'm not blind to that. But in town here, in Armadale area now, I get a lot of complaints of the transient laying in front of businesses and things down there. And, as you said, the police tell them not much we can do until, we get the proper enforcement. So thank you both.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Lopez?
Now, yeah, this is good that we're getting this in play here. But so a while back, a few months ago, when we had those big rain and Armadale flooded pretty good and Argentine flooded pretty good, I believe it was transient clothes and tents that got caught up in the turbine and they couldn't pump that storm water, and that was the reason why it flooded so bad. It's what I was told.
Commissioner, I think there were several things that prompted that, but you're right. Any of those items that are in those areas do get caught up in our systems. I don't want to say that was the exact cause of why that flooding occurred, but it doesn't help matters.
Thank you.
Well, I know that it was mentioned about District Two as an at-large. I can tell you that it's been all around our community, but it's more prevalent downtown because that's where most of the activity is viewed during working hours. And between the building tagging, the illegal activities that occur during the day as well as the evening, and the drug paraphernalia and the syringes that our children are exposed to in our parks, we don't know in this transient community, unless law enforcement has interacted with them, who these individuals are that are hanging around our parks and hanging around our neighborhoods. But I do believe it's time that this ordinance be brought forward. I'm really pleased that we took the time, because this is not an easy subject to discuss when it talks about possible actions against a community of individuals. However, it's time. And so if there's no other questions or comments, I'll ask the clerk if there's anyone, do we receive any comments from the public?
No comments received.
Is there anyone online from the public that wishes to make a comment?
There are no hands raised.
Is there anyone appearing in person who would like to address this item? Please come forward and state your name. Before we get started, Commissioner Kane has a comment.
We, at 511, we did receive a letter from Dustin Hare.
Yeah. So I think, Madam Clerk, do you have that letter or an email from Mr. Hare that was addressed to all the commissioners?
I do not.
We'll make sure you get a copy of that so that so that you have it for the record. Please, you'll have the 3 minutes to make your comment. Please state your name and city of residence, even though we may know who you are.
Chair Burrows, thank you. Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1. I live in KCK. Just a question that I haven't heard developed here tonight. The person that might find themselves receiving a citation or the penalty part of unlawful camping, how is that person adjudicated, and what consideration is given to that process, if you will, in terms of not necessarily backlog, but I have to assume this person is going to be given some sort of citation or ticket. And I just don't understand that part of the process yet, or what it does to our systems that we have in place trying to process these things, or what the potential impact to the individual who may have zero way to pay any kind of fine. Do they at some point find themselves with a bench warrant and now in our justice system? I just would appreciate more information. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I believe there's under violation, section J, it spells that out.
Sure. Casey Meyer, legal. That's a good question. So in section J, about halfway down, if it's been shown that the court convicted, by the court, that the person convicted is indigent, the court may, in its discretion, order that such person, in lieu of the payment of any fine imposed herein and/or court costs mandated by section 2313, be allowed to perform public service to satisfy the payment of such fine and/or costs. And then it explains how they would make that finding of indigency. I'll also note that just the citation and the fine mechanism is available, but the ordinance is also a tool that would enable our staff to address the situation without having to issue a citation. So if the person is compliant and removes themselves and their property as requested, then the law enforcement officer, whoever is engaged in dealing with that person, wouldn't wouldn't need to issue a citation. So the ordinance serves as a tool and guidance to law enforcement for most situations, I would expect. And again, how to deal with personal property, which prior to this ordinance, I know that the police were giving a longer period of time for notice, but I also don't know that items were being impounded maybe as they could have or should have been. So, and that's just because there was no direction on that. So, and I know there was one more question that I have not addressed, and I can't remember what that was, Commissioner Bynum. There was like a third thing you asked about, and I think I failed to include the answer.
I think the third question was just, the potential of these folks finding themselves in the justice pipeline.
Right. So if they would be issued a citation, I'm treating it like any other citations that law enforcement may issue. For example, loitering. If they fail to appear, then that is when they might get a warrant. And so, yes, potentially, once a warrant is issued, if law enforcement comes back into contact with them, then they would be arrested on that warrant. But Angie can probably address that more thoroughly if needed.
Yeah, so usually if we issue the citations, a lot of times when we are giving them the opportunity to move, they move. We have not had people flat out just refuse to move, they move. And we were giving them 7 to 10 days to move themselves and their properties. But in this case, if a citation's warranted, they would be issued a citation. They would be having the opportunity to appear in court. If they fail to appear, then obviously that's where the bench warrant would come about. I've always stressed, and I know my people that work with me always stress, make sure you appear in court or make sure you move. We try that to be the last option because we know that they are homeless. We know that they don't have the means to deal with the potential of fines. And so we try just to get compliance versus enforcement. And that's worked pretty well. It's just that we have to have a solution as to where do they go. And that's something that individual has to start working through with different social services to get off the streets. Did that answer your question?
Good evening, J.D. Rios, Policy and Government Affairs Advisor to our mayor. On behalf of the mayor, I just want to, first of all, express appreciation for the leadership of the chair of this committee, Commissioner Burrows, for championing this initiative, and for legal, Casey, was a very collaborative effort on writing this ordinance. And I believe a committee and the full commission need to be cognizant of that. I have here the emails and that of the feedback from the various departments represented here that were included in the ordinance for the most part. And I really think that is a very good example for our community to be cognizant of the collaborative efforts of addressing a very pressing issue in our community. And it actually keeps us in line with what surrounding communities are having to address. We, as a community, need to address this, and this is a very good start in that. And so we just want to, again, express our support and appreciation for the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rios. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this item this evening that is present? Okay, let the record stated that no one else stepped up. Committee, any other questions or comments before I call for a motion? Committee, accept a motion. Second. We have a motion for approval. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Burns,
Aye.
Kane, Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. Thank you, staff, for being here. Those that represent the departments that are impacted with this ordinance, who have the responsibility of carrying this out. Hopefully, this gives you the tools to have a little more deterrence into what we're dealing with. We believe this might be a great start for us addressing some of the issues that we've all been facing. So thank you very much. Committee, that takes us to, I believe, the last item of the evening. Before I misspeak, let me look one more time. It takes us to the last item of the evening, which is an ordinance related to the hours of sale for cereal malt beverage in the retail.
Okay, Casey Meyer, Legal Department. This was requested by the mayor, but I believe it originated with some issues that the police department was having to deal with. And so the request was that just the section having to do with retail of cereal malt beverages, which is not the same thing as retail of alcoholic liquor, just to make that clear, be changed from a 6 a.m. starting time to a 9 a.m. starting time. That is what the amendment reflects here. And just to add some additional information, normally alcohol beverage control is the entity that enforces alcohol-related ordinances. And so I don't think the police department would be out proactively enforcing it, but would be responding if there was a complaint or something.
This just makes it uniform with alcohol sales, if I'm correct.
So a liquor store can sell at 9 a.m. So this makes it consistent with liquor store sales. Most CMB retailers would, this would affect mostly convenience stores who sell beer at 6 a.m.
Any questions or comments? Committee? I'll ask the clerk if there's any. Oh, Bill, sorry. Excuse me, Commissioner Burns.
I just want to make sure in section D that it does not include liquor stores.
It does not include liquor stores.
Okay.
I made sure I double checked multiple times. But and I checked with our, I also checked with staff too, to ensure that there were no, that I understood off-premise and on-premise use. These are off-premise retailers, just to ensure that I wasn't accidentally affecting any other entity or business when they sell liquor or beer.
So basically, it's just starting time at 6 will now be 9.
Correct.
And Casey, if I'm reading this correctly, item C talks about that are licensed by Cereal Malt Beverage Act and the club and drinking establishment at any time when alcoholic liquor is allowed by law to be served on the premises.
Right. So that would not be affected because that one is already consistent with when alcoholic liquor. Correct.
That uniformity. This is one that just actually needed to be updated. There was a request that was put forward by the industry a couple of years ago when cereal malt beverage was being cut back.
No.
Because of alcohol content. Everything 5% or less, I believe, is considered cereal malt beverage. Anything over that is considered alcohol. Committee, we have a motion, or we have any other questions or comments from the committee in reference to this ordinance change? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk if there are any comments from the public.
No comments were received.
Anyone online, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands
Item.
raised.
Anyone appearing in person who would like to speak to this item? Let the record show no one step forward. Committee, I'd entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Committee, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Burns,
Aye.
Kane, Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you, committee. Committee, that concludes our meeting for this evening. There is a motion for adjournment. I did have one question. I have an ordinance, a resolution here. Is this for the next meeting? Fiscal year Community Corrections Year-End Report. This is a copy of the resolution we worked on earlier.
That's correct.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second for adjournment. Madam Clerk?
Can I get who's second? There's a motion, but who's second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Roll call. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Burns,
Aye.
Kane, Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Committee, thank you for your work. For those in attendance tonight, stick around. The next couple of minutes, you'll have the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee. Thank you, committee.
Are we ready to go as far as everyone can tell?
I see all the commissioners present, unless you're waiting on anyone else.
And we have Commissioner Dr. Hill online, correct?
And Commissioner Ramirez. Yes.
Excellent. All right, then we will roll. Thank you so much. Good evening and welcome to Administration and Human Services Standing Committee. Before I call our meeting to order, I want to announce that some committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely by Zoom as well as on site, and all participants joining by phone or computer, please mute your devices when you're not speaking to avoid background noise. During our meeting, make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak so that the public observing knows who's speaking, and make sure you speak directly into a microphone so that our comments are heard and recorded properly. This is critical given the number of remote participants that we have. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to our meeting, and those are included in the record of the meeting. The public can indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting our clerk's office by noon on the day of the meeting. The public can also have the opportunity to provide brief comments either by phone or Zoom or from here in our fifth floor conference room. During the meeting, we want to ask that you make sure you announce yourself by name and title when you speak, and make sure that, so that the public knows who's speaking, and it is critical given the number of remote participants. If public comments are allowed on an agenda item, those comments should be limited to the topic of the item. Disruptive comments and behavior are not permitted and may result in removal from the meeting. And I want to call the meeting of Administration and Human Services Standing Committee for Monday, September 22, 2025 to order. I am Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1 Chair of the committee, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Roll call. Hill,
Here.
Davis,
Present.
Ramirez,
Here.
Kane, Bynum.
Here. Thank you. Clerk, are there any revisions to our agenda this evening?
There are no revisions.
I may stop here and ask for a revision of moving item 1 to the end of the agenda because we don't seem to see any staff here from the Area Agency on Aging. So should they arrive, they can be the last item, and that would move us to the second committee agenda item, which is a resolution on a brownfield grant application. And I'm going to introduce and recognize Chelsea Chisholm, our Economic Development Director. She'll make us a brief presentation and share her remarks with us. Chelsea?
Thank you. Chelsea Chisholm, Economic Development Director, filling in for Alyssa Marcy as she is out of town. Alyssa did prepare a presentation, so we'll get that loaded and then we'll walk through this pretty quickly. And so generally just an overview. We have a lot of contaminated areas, particularly east of 635 due to industry. So former gas stations, well, dry cleaners, even with a lot of our land bank lots, we collapse those houses into the basement. And so there's remediation through that process. So our current program is we have 3 different funding sources that we utilize. We have done a lot of work. Alyssa has been pretty impactful on the brownfield impact when you look at over 400 parcels in KCK just from 2022 have been remediated. And so there's a final round of funding. There is no match requirement, and it is $1 million for a multi-purpose grant that does the initial environmental assessments and actually does the cleanup for projects east of 635 or 435, apologies. And so the ask is the approval for staff to apply. On the staff report, there was a fast track request I expect it's due to the approaching deadline for that application to be submitted.
Thank you. Do you have anything more for us?
No.
I have a couple of questions that possibly someone could answer. Is the million request the maximum? We request more.
I believe it is the maximum, but I can clarify that and follow up.
I forgot my second question. Commissioner Davis, did you have a question? Okay. Oh, would you go back a slide or two that showed us what's been spent and how much it accomplished? So 2 million remediated 400 parcels.
Correct.
So we could guesstimate that 1 million would do another 200 based on that math.
Yes.
And within our land bank, we have thousands of parcels,
4,500.
most of which we have to presume may need some remediation.
Likely, yes.
So the grant, a successful $1 million grant would take us so far, but it would be excellent to receive it. Okay, those are my questions. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Clerk, did we receive any notices, communication from the public on the item?
No comments were received.
And anyone online with their hand up to make a comment on this item?
There are no hands raised.
Is there anyone here in person that would like to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's perfectly okay, Director Chisholm, if you don't know the answer to this question. Are there any qualifications to have the parcels remediated? Like, does a development have to be in place? Do the neighboring owners need to agree? Is there anything like that, or is it just we own it, go and remediate it, or begin the process of remediation?
Yeah, if we own it, we can initiate that process without stakeholder engagement. We utilize these when we're looking at downtown redevelopment because there's lead-based paint and asbestos in a lot of those buildings. Definitely with the land bank, but they're really a tool and a great resource to get outside funding without a match requirement.
Perfect, perfect. In the event all this goes through, I think there's sorry, Commissioner Davis, District 8. I think there's a lot of potential to do some layering of this, and we're even having some of these conversations with community development and land bank now, just to make sure that if we can remediate it and make that investment, we know that there's a developer or somebody coming to make that investment, and then can also offer some home dollars or some other grants or support, just to make sure that we aren't remediating something that is merely going to remain vacant again, but that it would turn into something that would be worth the investment. And so that would be the only thing I would throw in there. But this is amazing. So kudos to Ms. Marcy and you and our planning and economic development staff, and of course legal as well.
Thank you. Is there any further comment or question on the commission? If not, I would take a motion.
Davis, move to approve. Oh, before I do that, for the fast track conversation, that would fast track it to this Thursday. However, we also have a meeting next week. Am I correct on that, on the 2nd?
That is correct.
So would it make a difference just because it would be one less thing to do on a planning and zoning meeting? Would it make a difference? I mean, could we just have it go to consent for next week?
I don't see any issue with that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Do you want to? Oh, yeah. If it's fast tracked, it wouldn't be on the consent agenda.
I was saying not to fast track it. That way we have one less thing to, it's going to be a long night on Thursday.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just trying to shrink that agenda. Okay, so yeah, I'll go ahead and move to approve this application without the fast track.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call roll, please?
Roll call, Hill,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane, Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0, motion carries.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chisholm. Appreciate it. And Alan, yeah, come on forward. Our next item is an ordinance amending the levying of a transient guest tax. And I want to start by saying that we did discuss this at the August standing committee meeting, and I personally think that we were quite eager. That's the word I'm using. We were eager to move something forward. I failed to reach out to the hospitality community and specifically Visit KCK. And so we were glad to hear from you, albeit after the fact, but that is why at the full commission meeting, I made the request and the motion to bring this back to this standing committee so that we can have a little bit more thorough discussion about the transient guest tax issue. So I'll read through the item. It's an approval of a charter ordinance exempting the unified government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas from the provisions of KSA 12-169A relating to the levy of a transient guest tax. And we did make a motion at the last full commission meeting to bring this back to this committee for a more full discussion. I think what I'd like to do is, we also have Deputy Chief Legal Counsel Wendy Green. I think what I'd like to do is hand it off to Ms. Green and then for maybe opening comments, and then hear from Ellen Carr with Visit KCK, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. So currently the status right now is we did charter out of the state statute. The state statute limits transient guest tax to 2%. We chartered out pretty much a while ago. The first time we did that was in, let's see, well, we did it way back when, but the latest rendition of our ordinance, a charter ordinance, is was in 2018, and it was CO 0118, and that set it at 8%. It also set what we were going to do with the proceeds of the transient guest tax, and it said all receipts derived from it would be placed in a convention and tourism fund, and those would be used for the promotion of conventions, promotion of tourism, and economic development related to tourism, with a minimum of $1,050,000 of those receipts to be spent on promotion of tourism on an annual basis. So that's where we stand today. The proposed ordinance that came to you had increased it to 10%, but then when it came out of committee, it was at 12%. It gave 3% of the receipts from the transient guest tax to Parks and Rec Department for capital improvement projects, and then the rest to be put into that convention and tourism fund to be used for the promotion of conventions, promotion of tourism, and economic development related to tourism. So that was where we're going toward that, like you said, Commissioner Bynum. But again, whatever you all direct me to do is what I will change that proposed ordinance to. That is as far as the rate at which you want to increase it to, as well as what you want to happen to the receipts of those taxes. And just so you know, that doesn't include all the hotels in our area, because some of the hotels, the TGT is actually pledged toward bonds in those areas. So, and we do have a list of those hotels, and if you have questions on what ones those would be.
Thank you. And Mr. Carr with Visit KCK, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Alan Carr. I'm Executive Director at Visit Kansas City, Kansas. I appreciate the commissioners bringing it back. We certainly heard some comments from our industry and some concerns with the ordinance as it was passed out of the committee. There's really three areas I want to touch on. One is the rate and how that affects our competitiveness in the region. Second is the earmark for non-tourism related projects, which we think sets a bit of a precedent we'd like you to think about. And then the third is the question of should this be temporary or permanent? I know this was discussed in conjunction with the World Cup, so I think that's worth talking about. I have a few slides that I sent around you. You've seen this. This is the rates in the region. We are currently at 8%, kind of in the middle of the pack. There are two communities, Lawrence and Olathe, that have raised their rates this year as they're both getting ready for the World Cup. One of the things, though, that I don't think there was discussion on when you consider this, it's not just the transient guest tax that a visitor or consumer pays, it's the total tax. So they also pay the prevailing sales tax rate. And so if the hotel is in a district that has a special rate, they pay those as well. So we've put together a list of all of the hotels in Kansas City, Kansas, and you can see the actual total tax rate that is paid by guests at those hotels. You can see the highest is 19.125%, with the lowest at 12, but that's for two hotels, the lowest at 17.125%. We also looked at how does this compare to the rest of the metro area and how would we compare to other communities in the metro. What we did was we tried to pull the highest tax rate we could find for surrounding cities. So this would likely be a special district. And then we pulled the lowest rate, what would be the standard rate. As you can see right now, there are currently three communities that are higher than our rate. And then we have about 4 hotels that come in kind of the top 5, I guess, of communities. And then you can see our lowest rate, the 17.1.25, we're on the lower end of the scale currently. We also looked at what happens if you raise this 1 to 4%. So at a 1% increase, we are at just over 20% to 19.625% for 4 hotels. There are still two areas in town that are higher than us. I believe the Olathe is just one single hotel. The KCMO is, I believe, a couple hotels in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. So it doesn't impact us greatly in terms of our competitiveness with the region. If you go up 2%, then some of our hotels become the highest tax rate in our metro area. So 4 of our hotels would have the highest tax rates in the region. And then as you can see, our lowest rates would become 19.125%, and that would make us within the top 5 communities within the region. At 3%, more of our hotels are the most expensive. 9 total hotels would be the most expensive hotels in the region, with the highest rate at 22.125%. And again, our lowest hotel rate would go up to 20.125. And then finally, at 4%, every hotel in Kansas City, Kansas would have the highest tax rates in the region, between 23.125% and 21.125%. We also looked at how does this compare nationally. Those figures are a little harder to find, but we did find a study from HVS Lodging, which is a company that does reports for the lodging industry. This is 2004 numbers. This includes the total tax rate that I just showed you. What we could find is currently the highest total tax rate in the country is in Omaha, Nebraska at 20.5%. And so you can, from those numbers I showed you, you can see that by raising this by more than a couple percent would make us likely the highest tax rate in the country. We did hear from several of our hotels. I won't spend a great deal of time going through this. This was actually a couple months ago. We asked them if they were in favor of a 1 or 2% increase. The biggest thing we heard from our hotels is they want to be competitive with the rest of the region. They don't want our rates to be higher than their competitors because they do believe that will impact their ability to attract customers into their hotels. On the second point on the allocation, traditionally, these funds are used for tourism-related projects. And, we definitely support funding parks and improving facilities that will increase tourism into Kansas City, Kansas. But the language that was adopted does not specify that any of these projects have to be tourism-related projects. It does set up a dangerous precedent that other communities have faced around the country of funding non-tourism related projects in your TGT fund. It sort of can open the floodgates, is what's happened in other communities for other non-tourism related projects to ask for these funds. And so it is something we would encourage you to think about. One alternative is, instead of writing these funds into the ordinance during your budget process, take that amount and allocate the funding for those projects out of the current balance in the TGT fund. And then finally, again, on the temporary versus permanent, as you can see from what I shared with you, a small increase will keep us competitive. And I think that's something that, while many of our hotels may not want to see any increase, would keep us in line, and could be done on a more permanent basis. If you looked at a larger increase, that really is something that's going to impact our competitiveness. And we would definitely recommend you look at doing that temporarily and writing that into the language. And our board did hear this matter a couple months back and did vote to endorse a 1% increase, is what my board did endorse. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And why don't you stay and we'll move through the rest of the agenda, including hearing public comment, and then circle back to you if we have questions or comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. With that, I'm going to move into the public comment section and ask the clerk if we received comments from the public, and also if you would make your statement regarding written comments versus speaking online at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. We do have several comments, and I do see Mr. James Bine online with his hand raised. I also receive a comment from him. Mr.
Bine, we
Bine,
need to know from you if you prefer to make public comment now or have the comments that you sent in read into the record.
I would prefer just to speak now, if that's okay.
Certainly. Thank you very much. And clerk, I don't know what order hands were raised in, so I'll turn it back to you to handle the comment section.
do you want to do the online first or the public?
Please, let's
comments?
go online. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bynes, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. State your name and residency, please.
Thank you very much. James Bain, 1324 North 75th Drive, KCK. I'm 100% in support of raising the transient guest tax, 1%, 2%, whatever you all feel is best is totally fine. I guess my comment gets to how the money is being spent and the wording in the ordinance. It is a little bit unclear if promote modifies convention, promote tourism convention, and promote economic development related to tourism, or if economic development related to tourism is a separate expenditure category. And so maybe I'm the only one that is unclear on that, but it really, I just don't want to limit our uses of this money. And I guess that gets to my second point. We just went through a tough budget season, and maybe we did have a meeting about the TGT tax, and I couldn't go to all the special sessions, and so I apologize. But we may want to use this opportunity to evaluate where this TGT funds are going, think creatively about, general fund things that are tourism that we're funding out of the general fund, or think about these tourism projects we have coming up. The big projects we've had recently, the Rock Island Bridge, Buc-ee's, American Royal. Ask ourselves if we can pay off those incentives quicker, get those projects back on the tax rolls, Now it's kind of a snowball effect. We get those projects on the tax rolls. Now we can pay off more projects and get those projects on the tax roll. And so I would just ask that we have a plan, think strategically, and, come together and educate the public. I can't remember any transparency that we've had on this TGT fund in a long time. And maybe I've missed the meeting on that, but it would be nice to get a report on, what is going on with these funds and a plan if we are to have some extra dollars, and a report from Visit
1 minute
KCK.
remaining.
I can't remember the last time we've had a report from them just for accountability. Maybe there's, we talked about at the last budget session, we talked about the Convention Visitors Bureau and how that money is being spent. Well, Visit KCK may need to come forward and have some accountability too, and maybe we reevaluate that situation. And so that's all I have. I support the tax and just some education for us and critically thinking about what to do with the money. Thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, were we going to read the received emailed statements?
We are. Do you want to proceed with any more online? I think that's the only comment.
Any other hands online? No?
No, there are
Okay.
no more.
And yeah, go ahead and read the received emailed statements.
Okay.
And again, I'll ask, if you're here in person and you emailed us and you'd rather make your comments at the microphone, we need to know that now, because she's going to read the statements of those who sent us emails. Sir, do you prefer to comment at the podium? And what is your name so that she can pull your written comments? Thank you. And we'll be right back to you in a moment. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead and proceed, please.
Sir, can you repeat your name again, please? Okay, thank you. All right. I have a couple comments here. I'll start with Terry Swineford. Unified Government of Wyandotte County, we are strongly opposed to raising the occupancy tax by 4% above the current rate. As a hotel in Wyandotte County, our total taxes already amount to 18.125%. Raising this rate to 22.125% would make us one of the highest tax hotel markets in the entire Kansas City metropolitan area. In fact, our rate would be 3% higher than Overland Park, Kansas, the next highest jurisdiction. To put this in perspective, a guest paying $150 room rate would see their bill increase to $183.19 at a 22.125% tax rate. This increase will inevitably drive guests away from Wyandotte County. Our property is directly across from the University of Kansas Hospital, which sits on the Kansas-Missouri border. Guests has already chosen to stay in downtown Kansas City or on the Country Club Plaza, where the overall tax burden is lower. This trend will only accelerate if the proposed tax is enacted. We also strongly object to the proposed allocation of 3% of these tax revenues to the Parks and Recreation Department. Hotel guests do not come to Wyandotte County to use parks. They come for hospital visits, sporting events, or to see family. Any new occupancy tax should be directed solely toward tourism development and attracting more visitors. Parks and recreation services should be funded by the residents who use them, not by the visitors staying in hotels. Finally, while we recognize the desire to leverage the upcoming World Cup to generate additional short-term revenue, establishing this increase without a sunset provision is short-sighted and will harm the long-term competitiveness of Wyandotte County's hotel market. Once international events have passed, this higher rate will discourage business, suppress occupancy, and shift revenue to neighboring areas. For those reasons, we urge you to reconsider this proposal at minimum, limit any increase to a short-term measure dedicated strictly to tourism promotion. Next is Vimal Renault, Marriott Fairfield Inn, owner, Kansas City, Kansas. Dear Mayor Tyrone Gardner and Commissioner, as a hotel developer and owner, I'd like to share my concerns and recommendations regarding the proposal to raise the transient guest tax, TGT, from 8% to 12%. While I understand the city's objective to generate additional revenues, such as a steep increase would have significant consequences for our guests, hotel operators, and long-term competitiveness as a destination. Impact on hotel guests. Higher room rates, guests will face noticeably higher nightly bills. For example, a $100 room currently adds $8 in tax. At 12%, this becomes $12, adding it substantially on multiple night stays. Perception of affordability. Travelers often compare destinations. A higher tax rate may push price-sensitive guests towards nearby cities, which have lower TGT or alternative accommodations. Impact on hotels and lodging operators. Competitive disadvantage. Hotels in Kansas City, Kansas would become less competitive relative to neighboring towns, reduce occupancy potential. Leisure, business, and sports travelers may shorten stays or book outside the city. Revenue pressures. To offset the impact, hotels may be forced to lower base rates, limiting revenue and long-term reinvestment. Impact on the city. Revenue growth. The city would collect approximately 50% more per room night. Potential economic slowdown. If occupancy declines due to higher rates, the long-term revenue impact may be less than projected. A more measured approach. I urge the commission to consider a more measured approach, such as 1% increase instead of a 4% increase. Even a modest adjustment would generate significant revenue while protecting the city's competitive position. This incremental strategy demonstrates fiscal responsibility, supports sustainability tourism growth, and ensure Kansas City, Kansas remains an attractive and competitive city. Strategic investment for a lasting legacy. Equally important is how these new funds will be used. While allocating TGT revenue to parks and recreation is a worthwhile concept, funds must be strategically earmarked for projects that expand tourism and drive long-term visitation. Rather than being consumed by routine maintenance, these dollars should fund transformational developments, assets that draw visitors from across the region and beyond. For example, a state-of-the-art pickleball complex capable of hosting regional and national tournaments, major new recreational attractions that serve residents while attracting thousands of visitors to fill our hotels and restaurants. This is a crucial distinction. The TGT is a tool for tourism promotion, and its revenue should directly support projects that market Kansas City, Kansas as a destination. By investing in visitor-generating facilities, we grow the tax base itself, creating a lasting cycle of reinvestment and prosperity. Conclusion. In closing, I respectfully urge the Commission to consider a smaller or even no increase to the transient guest tax, or at a minimum, a phased approach. Equally important, I encourage that any new revenues be strategically invested in projects that strengthen our city's appeals as a tourism destination. A balanced approach such as this will protect our hospitality industry, attract long-term visitors, and create a lasting legacy of growth for Kansas City, Kansas. Thank you for your thought and consideration. Our next one is Mario Escobar. He's the chairman of the board of directors from the Parks and Recreation Department. On behalf of the Board and Parks Department, I'd like to thank the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee in considering and supporting the Parks Department and being a recipient of TGT Transient Guest Sales Tax. With the number of people coming in the Kansas City metropolitan area for the World Cup next year, there will be a huge demand on our parks that we provide the necessary amenities to accommodate the enormous amount of folks who will visit our parks. It's imperative that we provide them with a fun and safe environment that we should be providing them with. Because of a significant budget cut due to revenue neutral, we support the added resource from TGT funding to help provide the best amenities that our parks should provide, and also help fund additional projects like the Rock Island Bridge project for the required additional park and reinvestment on our side of the Kansas River and help take the burden off our taxpayers. Look, a lot of major cities do the same thing of increasing taxes on hotels, motels, and Airbnb when they host major events in the city. Best regards. Our next is from Amanda De Various Sibia. She's the executive director of the Argentine Betterment Corporation. Dear Commissioners, I am writing to express my strong support for the proposed increase to the transient guest tax TGT in Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas. As residents, we have shouldered multiple tax increases in recent years to help sustain essential services and keep our community moving forward. While our families and households have stepped up, it is important that corporations, including hotels and short-term rental providers, also contribute their fair share. The TGT offers a balanced way to generate new revenue without placing additional strain on our citizens. The funds collected through the TGT already play a vital role in supporting Visit KCK and promoting tourism in our community, as well as contributing to local projects such as park improvements. An increase in this tax would expand these opportunities, driving more economic activity and creating long-term benefits for residents and businesses alike. With the FIFA World Cup coming to our region next year, now is a critical time to invest in infrastructure, amenities, and community improvements to parks and recs that will ensure Wyandotte County shines on the global stage. By modestly increasing the TGT, we can strengthen our local economy, create a more welcoming environment for visitors, and ensure that the growth we experience also benefits the people who live here. I urge you to approve an increase to the transient guest tax as a fair, forward-looking investment in our county's future. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to Wyandotte County. Commissioner, those are all the comments that I received.
Thank you very much. I want to take a step aside and ask our Director of Parks, Angel Ferrara, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, and I'll apologize for not having you do that sooner. You can come up to the table, please. And Commissioner Davis reminded me that when we had agenda review for this item, I was out of town being a tourist with my family, and we spent our entire vacation in a park. And Commissioner Davis took the lead on this agenda item for agenda review for tonight and reminded me that we had asked Angel Ferrara to be present tonight. If you wouldn't mind speaking about parks, but specifically the mandate, if you will, that you've been given to be a part of developing the park area around the Rock Island Bridge, which is purely a tourist destination, and the burden, if you will, that that places on your department to take yet one more park into your inventory and then have to manage it, take care of it, and find the funding for it. So, and any other parks topic you would like to speak on, but I think Rock Island Bridge is top of mind. Please.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Angel Farrar, Director for UG Parks and Recreation. So through the development project of the Rock Island Bridge, the UG Parks Department did inherit roughly 3.5 to 4 acres of park land at the riverfront. So in the last few years, we've been kind of taking a look at that parcel and seeing what role that will play for the development and then also for the users going down to the riverfront. I think that there are some assumptions that that will be developed and built out to be a usable park space with amenities still to be determined. As you know, our department oversees 54 parks, probably 2,500 plus acres of parkland, 10 plus facilities, and a lot of other things in our purview. So definitely bringing on another park is exciting, but also comes with its challenges as it relates to funding. I will note that our department does try to go after grants when we can, having recently put in for some grant opportunities for that particular area, but to build out a riverfront park, especially, you know, I think in that area is going to take probably quite a bit of money to do so. I will also say that our department uses tourism dollars in many ways. So not just for probably maintenance projects, but also to develop areas that we know are being highly used when it comes to tourism. I think of Caw Point Park, for example, that does have a historical component that people are probably coming and frequenting and looking at the historical significance of Lewis and Clark at that park. And so I could probably talk a little bit more if there's any other questions as it relates to how the department uses tourism dollars or maybe how parks plays a role in tourism. But specifically for the Riverfront Park, we would need, to put it this way, when we put in for the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Program grant, we asked for $13 million to try to build that park out. And we did so with the assumption that we'd be using previous project dollars as a match. So to kind of put into perspective what we'd be looking at to really build a riverfront park out the way it could be, to make it really attractive for our residents and also visitors, probably looking at somewhere in that ballpark.
Thank you very much. And just stand by. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now I want to ask if there are any other hands online. We've done the online and we've done the written comments, correct, clerk?
That is correct.
Okay, and anyone here in person that would like to speak on the item, sir, come to the podium. You can come on up and be ready. And sir, if you would state your name and city of residence, and you would have up to 3 minutes for your remarks. Thank you very much.
My name is Chris Patel. I'm a resident of Louisville, Texas, but I'm a owner of the Hilton Garden in Kansas City, Kansas. That's why I'm here. My concern about the raising a tax is right now we're losing our competitive to the downtown Missouri Sides Hotel, and we can see in our star report as well that we losing in occupancy big time. And if you like, we can share that report with you as well. And we are one of the highest. And if we go for the 4%, probably we're going to be the highest in the nation. That is not bringing occupancy up, is bringing it down. So we're chasing a couple percentage, but we are losing a whole tax revenue in a competitive. So I really encourage, at least for our downtown property as a Hilton Garden Inn, I'm opposing the tax, and I would really love to help to get the funding. Like there is the Reardon Center next door is boarded up. If it's something that I can, as a hotelier, can help something to generate the revenue up there with the existing center, that we can generate the meeting room revenue or something up there instead of the boarded up. And probably during the FIFA we can use that as something to welcome center or something as well.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, JD Rios with the mayor's office. Well, one thing that Alan did not mention to you that I think is worthy of just information is that Kansas City, Kansas currently, its hotels are among the top in occupancy rate right now. And so that's with our current, guest rate structure. You start playing with it, and that is, I would recommend advocating for a temporary increase so that we can see the ramifications of an increase, one. And then secondly, let's not forget that one of the driving factors for this to even to be brought up was the World Cup, and needing to have some source of resource to have our community ready. And this is certainly not anything against our parks, for heaven's sakes. They're one of the premier assets of our community. And you can't have a more dedicated staff as part of the unified government in regards to the Parks Department. But I think, again, keep our eyes focused. We got a World Cup coming in yet less than a year. We need resources yesterday for that. And also having a temporary increase so that, again, there could be further study of the ramifications for anything permanent, which may include additional funding for our parks. But right now, let's try to keep ourselves focused a little more narrowly, because there is an important event that will be worldwide, and that is not an exaggeration. And Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County can be a very important part of that, but it does take resources to, get us there. So I would suggest temporary and no more than 2%. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JD. Hello, and state your name and city of residence for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. My name's Andrea O'Hara. I'm the Executive Director for the Hotel and Lodging Association of Greater Kansas City. And I'm here to express our support for a modest increase in TGT to 1% increase is what we would be supportive of with our hotels. But more importantly, we want to encourage that the allocation of those funds be thoughtfully and transparently reinvested in tourism-related initiatives that drive overnight stays, create jobs, and grow the local economy. And we feel that can be done by enhancing, with the investment of those taxes, enhancing the attractiveness of the destination, which increases occupancy, our average daily rate for our hotels, and our overall visitor spending. And that visitor spending has a multiplier effect. It's not just hotels, it's the retail, it's the shops that those visitors shop in, the restaurants that they eat in, and the entertainment venues that they visit, which ultimately keeps its taxes low for our residents. Cities are constantly competing for business across the nation, and they're always looking for that competitive edge. They invest in competing for conventions and business meetings, sports tournaments, and leisure travelers. And cities that invest in their city as a tourist destination are more likely to receive and win that business. When that doesn't happen, a city loses its competitive edge, and it loses the visitation that it has coming in, and that outside spending and that tax revenue that's generated through that. Destinations International, which is kind of our organization that kind of is the guiding light for destination marketing and convention and visitors bureaus, they recently said that many cities are investing their occupancy tax to fund marketing programs, develop visitor amenities, and increase convention sales initiatives. And where those revenues are invested in that way, they see increase in overnight stays and lodging tax collections. Just a couple of examples. Savannah, Georgia in 2023 increased their occupancy tax from 6 to 8% and saw a revenue reach $48.7 million, which was an increase of nearly 10% year over year. In Oklahoma City, they increased their hotel tax from 5.5 to 9.25 and dedicated nearly $11.5 million annually to marketing and event sponsorships and gaining attraction from conventions. So it's these examples that show when cities invest lodging tax and revenue back into tourism, the community wins, small business wins, hotels stay full, visitors spend, and those, again, are outside dollars that keep tax low for our residents here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? No other public comment at this time? Okay, thank you very much. A couple of things. Wendy Green, if you could, I jotted 3 notes for myself for clarity. The first one is, if we were to move this forward and it gets voted on at full commission, its publication date would occur when, and then its effective date would occur when?
Wendy Green, Deputy Chief Counsel. So it depends on how fast the clerk's office can get it signed by the mayor and then get it to the Echo to publish. So typically, the Echo's deadline to publish, to get something to publication is that Friday before. and they publish on Thursdays. So if it gets passed on a Thursday by the commission, it's most likely not going to get to the Echo until the following Friday, and then would publish the following Thursday. So most likely 2 weeks after it gets passed by the commission would it get published. And then it has to publish twice. And then after that last date of publication, it has to have 60 days. This
Okay.
is a charter ordinance.
So based on that, we
Mhm.
could still find ourselves in the timeline of a January 1
Oh,
effective date.
At least, because this is a charter ordinance.
Okay.
There's that 60-day timeline when someone would have the opportunity, if they had at least 10% of the electors of the last general election sign off on it with them, they could file a protest. And if they do that, then it has to go to a vote of the electors.
Okay. And that
Right.
is a little side item. However, that's part of that 60-day period.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Last question for you right this minute. James Bain in the public comment had asked about other uses of transient guest tax. And I think you should address that because they are limited by law as
They
far
would-
as the uses of transient guest tax.
They would have been if we stuck with the state statute. However, we chartered out of the state statute.
Okay.
So that's why we could do the 3% towards the parks.
But we couldn't pay down debt. We can't, there are certain,
No.
you,
there- we
okay.
do.
So if we wanted to
We should.
raise it and build a Central Avenue bridge,
Okay.
okay, not suggesting that.
Yeah, we generally have always kept it aimed toward.
Okay, because I thought,
'Cause that's what's paying for it.
and I thought that within the proposed ordinance language that we have in front of us, we're still keeping it within a tourism lens.
Correct, because
Okay.
that's historically what we have done.
Okay, thank
Because
you. very
that's what the
much.
statute says, but since we chartered out of the statute,
Okay,
technically, we're not
good-
limited by the statute's limitations.
good clarification, but I appreciate that. I didn't realize that the uses could actually be non-tourism at all
Mhm.
because of our chartering out
Correct.
of state statute. Okay, thank you very much.
Generally, the good rule of thumb is since it's being generated from tourism,
Right,
we have stuck with a tourism
okay.
use.
Okay. For me, I just want to make another comment. First of all, Alan and your team and everyone in the hospitality industry, you are so greatly appreciated. We deeply appreciate what you do, and you do, I think, an incredible job of promoting Kansas City, Kansas with the dollars that you do receive. I want to make sure you and your staff know that because it is impressive. I personally push back on the notion that hotel guests do not come to Wyandotte County to use parks. I'm just one traveler, but I am a traveler and I travel often and have for a very long time. And I can't name a city that my family and I have traveled to where we did not find a park. Because parks are one of the few places that don't cost me $30 a person to walk in the door. And it's important to me to make that comment publicly because I disagree with the notion that people don't come to Wyandotte County to visit parks. I just simply disagree. So I'll leave it at that. I think I've made my point. We have Commissioner Ramirez with his hand up. We'll start there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank everyone who came to spoke. Thank you, Alan, Carr, and our Parks Director. I'm cognizant of what's coming next year, the World Cup, and we're wanting to raise funds for tourism, but also for our parks, but also cognizant of the competitiveness that our hotel industry is going to have to compete against. You know, it's not just KCK, they're competing with other cities. One city, Lawrence, 45 minutes away as well, Olathe, Overland Park, Casey Mo, excuse me. And so I do think we need an increase of some type. Um, I'm going to propose a compromise. I would like to see what my colleagues think and what the industry and Mr. Carr believes. I'm going to propose a 2% increase with a 4-year sunset. And at the end of it, at the end of each year, the rate drops a 0.5% so that by the end of year 4, it drops back down to 8%. I would like to see what my colleagues think of that and what the industry as well. That is just, I'm going to use that as my proposal.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't mean to interrupt you if you're not done.
No, that was it. I just wanted to make my proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got that. And Commissioner Dr. Hill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to all those that are in the meeting and to staff. Thank you so much. I really appreciated this opportunity to look at the tax rate comparisons. Very interesting information, and I am not opposed to my fellow commissioner's proposal, especially being able to take it back down. I do believe that us as a community, we have heard so many complaints about taxes, and we have this opportunity to have some funding that could help us in other ways, which could be helpful, that would not necessarily come from the taxpayers here, but from individuals coming in for other reasons, coming in from out of town. So I am a little leery only in the fact that it is a tax increase, period. That's the one thing, and I definitely understand this. This is also a tool, an opportunity to get some things done with raising taxes from those that might come in from out of town. I also agree with our Madam Chair about parks. I just had relatives in town, and I went to immediately one of the parks, and my guests loved it. I also, in looking at the guest tax sheets where it's showing how much each TGT is paying, each hotel. And I noticed the Hilton Garden Inn, and I definitely understand the concern for the owner at Hilton Garden Inn with the building next door that is boarded up, and how his rates are some of the highest rates with that building next door. So I could see some real concern. If I was a business person, I would definitely have some real concerns there also. So with all my rambling, I will say that I am willing definitely to consider what Commissioner Ramirez proposed. I could do the 2%. At first, I was really leaning toward that 1%, but I could, with a little more persuasion, go to the 2%. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis, District 8. Mr. Carr, as always, it's good to see you, and thank you so much. I think this has been a very lively, healthy conversation on finding the balance of how we continue to invest in our community in a way that doesn't just benefit our guests, doesn't just benefit the property owner so they can make a profit, but also benefits the community by which we find ourselves in. And I can appreciate our business owners that are really, really wanting us to be cognizant of being competitive, My rebut to that is we have to go back to the taxpayers and justify to them the incentives many of you receive to build the very facilities that you are advocating we do not tax. And so everybody needs to have skin in the game. And I think we have to make sure that we are continuing to have those conversations, not in silos, but really seeing our community as one. In the presentation that was given, I don't know, can we put the numbers back up here if possible? In the presentation that was given, Mr. Carr, you talked about, can you go to, yes, so one of those is fine. Yeah, this one's fine. So of the total tax, how much of that is returned to, let's just say, Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County?
So I believe, Commissioner, the TGT, the state keeps a portion of that. And off the top of my head, I'm not remembering, I think it's 1 or 2% for administering the collection of that. So the rest of that comes back to the TGT fund. Then the sales tax rate, so a portion of that is state sales tax, and I don't have those numbers in front of me. I believe we're at
6.25 for the state.
Yeah, thank you.
And then a portion of those, and I guess that's my whole point looking at these numbers, is one of the reasons why we're seeing kind of an increase for, and can we go back to the actual hotels? Yes, this is great. One of the reasons why we're seeing kind of those variations is because some of these are in incentive districts, meaning the dollars that are generated don't necessarily go back into the TGT, they don't go back into the general fund, they go back into that particular area for investment. And this has been happening, quite frankly, since the inception of the Legends. And so I guess to the business community, what I'm saying is that I think there has to be some give and take here, right? That yes, what your guest is paying is high. However, we had to do that to build out what we currently have. And now the question is, do we change up the strategy a little bit to spread that out, because we know that guests don't stay at the hotel. They don't stay at that one attraction. They move around and use various amenities when they are here. Mr. Carr, were you able to, and it's fine if not, just engage our Airbnb folks or any of those folks just to see what the data is and kind of what they had to say?
Yeah, so we didn't hear specifically from Airbnbs, but just for perspective, in 2024, Airbnbs or short-term rentals in total accounted for about 4% of all collections in Kansas City, Kansas. So 4% of the total TGT collections went to short-term rentals in 2024.
Gotcha. So it's not as much, and I think some of that is an enforcement problem because we definitely have more than 4% worth that's here. But that's kind of the reality that our community is experiencing right now. Mr. Rios made a comment about occupancy for hotels. Do you have data on that?
Yeah, as he stated, we get a report called the STR report, where hotels put in their numbers, and we get on a weekly basis the numbers. So we typically, Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, we get county level data for the rest of the metro area, and we typically have the highest daily rate in the metro. So that's the rate someone pays per night. I just pulled at the end of August. That's our most recent data. $145.16 was the average rate that someone paid year to date in Kansas City, Kansas. That is the highest in the metro. We also typically have one of the highest occupancies in the metro. So year to date, our occupancy is 65.7%. Johnson County was higher than us at 65.7%. Johnson County was higher than us at 67.4%. One of the things I will note on occupancy that our hotels would tell you, the weekends, our occupancy is much higher on the weekends. They can get much higher rate on the weekends. We struggle much more during the week, and that's where rate becomes much more sensitive. We don't have the business travel that Johnson County gets, and so they're able to fill more rooms during the week than we are.
Yeah, understood. And then having, of course, the Ribbon Center closed, all that stuff, not having that convention center open, I think is a big contributor to that particular situation. I wouldn't even say at the rate, it would be kind of what is around, right, that particular area. I would agree with my colleagues on parks being a part of kind of the tourism ecosystem for any community, right? And you think of Chicago and you think of, right, the lakefront, you think of Millennium Park, you think of these areas that are publicly shared. And even on our website for Visit KCK, we have multiple parks and even community centers listed on our visitor, right, tourism website. And so I do think that maybe there probably needs to be more education and collaboration on the importance of parks to our hotels and to the hotel industry, just to make sure that they understand what our full ecosystem is and what we are doing, because we do need everybody to be on the same page and make sure that we are contributing. I was the one that really pushed, hard for the 4%. I can concede of that being too steep of an ask. The logic behind it was that when we were talking about World Cup preparations, and our parks department had talked about all of the things that they needed, there was roughly a $2.4 million ask. A 1% of the TGT dollars would fund about $600,000. And so you can do the quick math, and that's how the 4% came to be. I can concede to a 2% and agree with that proposal. I do believe we should still have dedicated funding for parks in TGT, so we're not in this wishy-washy budget of, do we give parks some money, do we not? I think we need to accept parks is a part of our tourism strategy. I'm even okay with the 4-year sunset. I wouldn't necessarily agree within the kind of timeline of the increase having a stair step, just because it's going to cost roughly, as Angel said, $13 million to continue to build around just the Rock Island Bridge alone. And so a stair step would just mean less money every year. I think if we're going to make the investment and see what the impact is, let's do it. And then after we're done, we can see a more holistic view of what the impact has been. I believe that, and if I'm not mistaken, for the World Cup, we don't have enough hotels. We're not going to have enough Airbnbs, right? So whatever we put here, folks are going to pay if they want to be here. It's after the World Cup and before the World Cup what the sustainability would be. And so that would be my, what I would be in for is a 2% increase, which would take it to 10. We keep the dedicated portion to parks and add a 4-year sunset. But interested to hear what my colleagues feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane.
Well, I know Commissioner Ramirez had talked about a stair step, so I don't know how Commissioner Ramirez feels about getting rid of the stair step, but adding in the 4-year sunset.
I don't have a problem with it. The only reason I put in my proposal the stair stepping was just to, yes, for us capture these new years that were coming, the 4 years, but then also bring back some equilibrium back to the market of where we are currently. That was just my thought process.
Gotcha.
So Commissioner Ramirez, it was not a motion. You
No,
did not make a motion.
I did not make a motion. I just presented just for us to have discussion and see where it was a compromise that I brought forward, and so that we can just continue to have discussion.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Davis.
Sure, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move that we adopt the measure with the following provisions. The increase for the transient guest sales tax go from 8% to 10%, with the dedicated percentage to parks. What was that percentage, Ms. Green? I'm so sorry.
3%.
3%. So, Chairman, do this again. I move that we adopt the following provisions to the transient guest sales tax: an increase from 8% to 10%, with 3% dedicated to parks at a 4-year sunset. That is the motion.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Question, Counselor. Was there a request for a fast track on this at all?
Not from me or anybody that I was aware of, no.
Okay, and we don't necessarily need one?
No.
Okay. All right. one more question for you. It's nothing more than my curiosity. But on the slide we're looking at, the bottom half that's identified as lowest lodging tax rate, sitting at a sales tax rate of 9.125, which is our city, county, and state base sales tax rate. Anything above that, like the top half of the graph, then has some sort of special additional sales tax right now, starting at the 9.725, which is a 0.6 sales tax increase. I'm assuming that's a city. I'm assuming those are CIDs.
Correct.
Do we know that for sure?
Yes, because
Okay.
our city sales tax right now is only our retailer sales tax, I apologize, is only 9.125.
Thank you. And so the CID on each of those properties listed at Homewood Suites and above is a CID dedicated to that property, correct?
Either that property or that particular area.
The property or the area.
Right, we're lucky enough to have our CFO behind us, so she could probably clarify if I am misspeaking.
Shelley could even, CFO, yes, the CIDs would either be used for reimbursement for eligible costs back to the developer or infrastructure, again, based on reimbursing whatever was approved in the development agreement.
Thank you very much. Just for clarity. We have a motion and a second, and we have Commissioner Davis.
Just wanted to get this on record, Dr. Knieven. By us increasing the transient guest sales tax for the development agreements that do include revenue generated from the TGT, does that mean that if those developments continue to do well, that those incentives can be paid off sooner?
Shelley Knieven, CFO, yes. So there's a few of our hotels which do capture the TGT. So if you generated more revenue, then that would go towards paying off either the STAR bonds or the TIF bonds.
Great. Just wanted to get that on record.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, roll call, please.
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone involved. Our next item is another ordinance relating to taxation. Calling for the election relating to a city retailer sales tax. This would be an ordinance that calls for an election for the purpose of submitting to the electors of the city of KCK a question relating to the imposition of an additional city retailers sales tax. We did hear this in August and took no action. Miss Wendy Green, are you also presenting this item?
I am.
Okay, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Wendy Green, Deputy Chief Counsel. Good evening again. The following slides I have put together is just information about the laws as leading up to tonight as they currently stand. This is just about our city's retailer sales tax. There we go. So this is the statute as it exists today. The ordinances that we had leading up to them were prior to this existing statute. When we chartered out of the state statute, it was allowed. Now it's not. The state decided it didn't like cities being able to charter out of its statute, so it changed the language to make it no longer non-uniform. Now it is uniform. So the caps are what they are. It's a 2% for general purposes and 1% for special purpose. You must designate in your language when you are establishing your ordinance for a city sales tax exactly what you're going to be using that for. So if you're saying you're going to be using it for general purpose, you have to state you're going to be using it for general purpose. If you're going to use it for a special purpose, you have to say exactly what that special purpose is for, and it's going to sunset or expire after 10 years. So if you remember, we have our uh, special purpose statutes or special purpose city retailer sales tax, which I will get to in a minute. They do have a sunset. We have our countywide retailer sales tax. So our city one right now, it has to go in increments of 0.05%. Our countywide retailer sales tax is fixed in increments of 0.25%. So special can go up to 1, general up to 2 for the city. County cannot exceed 1%. Currently for the city, our general, we first established it back in 1980 with 0.5. We then increased it again, effective January 1, 1984, with an additional 0.5. It was shortly after that that they changed the statute and made it no longer uniform. So we've got 1% left under the general cap. Sometimes I can get this to work. There we go. We do have the special purpose countywide retailer sales tax that you could use. Did I go too far? Okay, apparently I did. This thing hates me. Okay, thanks. There we go. Okay, the city retailer sales tax for the special purpose, we had the 0.25 for EMS. That went in under a charter ordinance under 2004, which when they allowed charter ordinances, shortly after that is when they changed it and said, yeah, no longer. We want you all to be stuck under our state statute. However, they did enact the part of the state statute that said, if you've got one going right now, though, we'll let you keep it going. You can repeal it with another ordinance. We're not going to make you sunset it in 10 years, which is why our EMS 0.25% city sales tax can keep going. It didn't have to sunset. But then we did the 0.375% for the public safety neighborhood infrastructure, and that does have to sunset every 10 years unless we reenact it.
We renewed it.
2018.
So the public safety and infrastructure is through 2028. Correct. But are you saying the EMS tax, we've not had to place a renewal of that on the ballot?
It'll keep going until we decide we don't want it to.
I just, I'm just misremembering because I thought in 2018 we actually renewed both, but that is not correct.
Correct. We
Okay.
only renewed the one.
Okay, thank you.
So we've got 0.375% remaining under the special purpose cap for the city retailer sales tax side. For county-wide retailer sales tax, we did a 0.5% retailer sales tax on the county side. Back in 1975, we did an additional 0.5% on the county side in 84. We have nothing left under the county. Under 12-187 of the statutes, under B5, you can have a special statute or a special county sales tax to finance healthcare. You can do that at the rate of 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, or 1%. And that's all the things that they think fall under healthcare services. And that would be in addition to the 1%. The statute does also include, we could do a sales tax. Again, all of these would have to be voted on, so they'd have to go to the electors for purposes of building a jail or a courthouse or things like that. But that wouldn't be in addition to the 1%. Whatever we did for that would take over part of the 1% that's already there. So I didn't include that part. Anything else we would want to do for a special purpose countywide retailer sales tax, we would have to ask the legislature to adopt a law allowing us to do it. So the one you see in the news right now for Johnson County, they wanted to renew their special purpose countywide retailer sales tax for their jail, their courthouse. They used it for both. And it's been challenged, the language that they used. And I read it over and they did change the language when they were renewing it. That they already had a specific provision in the statute that allowed them to do that. We don't have that corresponding provision. So we would have to go to the legislature and ask them to add one for us. So right now, under the county, we've got nothing left.
Okay. Okay.
And that was in.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So committee, this is a discussion about whether to bring forward an ordinance that would include, in my opinion, a city sales tax. And I'll just start it by saying that I'm not opposed to the potential placement of a sales tax on a ballot in 2026. But for me, I would want us to clearly identify for what purpose, for what reason. I mean, we certainly have needs. But for me, I would be looking for language that includes an offset against property tax. And I don't know if we can do that.
We can't under the law because we, as a taxing entity, cannot abate taxes, if that makes sense. We don't have anything under the law that allows us to
I see.
abate taxes. The only thing that would allow us to reduce taxes is if someone were to get a reduction in the value of their property that would then lead to a corresponding reduction in their taxes.
Could we state as a commission goal that it would be our ideal to utilize funds gained from an additional sales tax to provide property tax relief? Or are we just too close to the edge, even having the conversation?
That would be a little bit too close to the edge. And also you want to make sure if you want to use the sales tax in the general fund to be able to fund anything the general fund needs funded, you want to keep it at a general purpose sales tax. If you start to specify what you want to use that sales tax for, it now becomes a special sales tax and you're limited to that 0.375% that we have left.
Okay. Commissioner Ramirez, your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My stand still stands as the last time this was brought forward. I support a sales tax initiative, but not right now. The timing is not good. If we put it on the ballot, it will fail. And like I said at the last time, in my opinion, we only have one shot. And if we waste our one shot, this is never going to happen again. We need to have a robust conversation and education with the community if we're going to raise the sales tax by 1%. It's too soon. It's in like a month or so. It will fail. And if we can continue to every election keep bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up, it does nothing. We're never going to accomplish anything. Yes.
Just I'm sorry, for a point of clarity, we would not be placing anything on the November ballot because that window has opened and closed. So anything we did, we would have to be looking into 2026. I just wanted to clarify that for you.
Thank you.
But please continue.
I may have misread the ordinance. So this would be for the November 2026 election.
Or August, or a
Or the
special election, our choosing counselor.
Yeah. Commissioner Ramirez, this is Wendy Green, Deputy Chief Counsel. You didn't misread the ordinance. We just carried everything over from the last time just for discussion purposes.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought I was okay.
No, you're fine. I'm sorry.
But I would say yes, we can, but I would say let's wait till the November. That gives time for us, the community, to digest, to have conversation, for us commissioners to go out in the community in our own districts and do what we need to do to get support for this. So I do support it, but if only we just do it in the November election to give us an ample amount of time to garner the support.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kane.
We're going to have a new mayor and 3 new commissioners. I don't think we should rush into this. I think that the new elected body should be able to weigh in on our decisions, or their decision, because it won't be mine. You know, and I'm like a Christian, I think it's a great idea, but some of the new people may have their own wants, or maybe they don't want it at all. And I think that we shouldn't move it forward. We should wait till the elections and then bring it back once the commissioners have been around for a while. And it's education, 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 because right now, there's a lot of people out there that are putting the wrong information intentionally out. And this gives them another opportunity to do the exact same thing.
Thank you. I failed to, Dr. Knieven.
Shelley Knieven, CFO. I was just going to also mention, just so that you're aware of this, that as a cash budget, we can't bind future commissions about decisions like the property tax offset. So I just wanted to put that out there because it kind of cuts off that opportunity. So just sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Dr. Hill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Hill, District 4. I really like, and I appreciate Wendy Green's presentation, the current city retailer sales tax, the part that says special purpose, and it has emergency medical services, first responders, transport services. And then under the ordinance of CO-1-04, I really like the part that talks about financing public safety and neighborhood infrastructure, including the construction, repair, and maintenance of roads, curbs, and sidewalks. So first of all, let me say I definitely agree with our other fellow commissioners who have said not right now, because I know in both my district and other districts, the constituents are very angry because they don't have roads, curbs, and sidewalks, and if they do, they're not kept up. So there's been a lot of information out there, and I've driven on a lot of these roads and areas where we don't have curbs and sidewalks. So I would just, and unless we're going to actually get this done, I just feel like this is not the time. I think we could wait. I really appreciated the remarks about we're going to have a new mayor, new commissioners, and they'll have to be brought up to speed on all this too. So where I really like what it says, this really may not be the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to go to Alan, but before I do that, I want to ask a question a different way. Right now, we have an EMS tax and we have a public safety and infrastructure tax. And those taxes generate, I think, public safety and infrastructure generates 13 million, 14 million annual. And we use that money for public safety and infrastructure, and we don't use general fund money for the things we use that money for. So in that way, it does offset property tax. I really am trying to stay on the right side of the conversation, but we specifically use those special sales tax dollars for those things. And by so doing, we don't have to fund those things with general fund dollars. Would that be a fair statement?
Shelley Knieven, CFO. Yes, that is a correct statement.
Okay, so the difference is that we just can't make a promise, if you will, that if we do this, we won't do this. And we can't bind future commissions. Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Administrator House, I didn't know if you had any thoughts on the matter. So far, I think we've heard the commission say, not right at this minute, but we feel like there's general support. We also have heard we have a new mayor coming in and at least 2 new commissioners, and that it would be worthwhile to wait and hear their thoughts on the matter. Also, the fact that we would need extensive public education. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts from an administration level that you might want us to hear.
Thank you, Alan Howes, Assistant County Administrator. Just a couple of points. So June 1st would be the deadline that the election commissioner would need an approved resolution to go on in the August primary election. And September 1st would be the deadline they would need a resolution for the November 2026 ballot. So that's sort of the timing that you'd be working with for the 26 election cycle. There are currently constitutional amendments, one on August and one in November. So just also kind of be aware of that context. And then next year is I think the gubernatorial election cycle and the federal election cycle that are happening in 2026 as well. The way the state has now changed, and sorry if you covered this already, the legislature changed it so that there are only 3 elections in any given year, whereas before, cities and counties could pick a date and say, we want to do an election in this date. The state has now said you can do it in March, you can do it in August, you can do it in November. And there is no cost to a locality for doing that, provided that everybody within that locality has the access to vote in that election. So if it was a KCK only ballot that Bonner Springs and Edwardsville residents weren't voting on, then the city of KCK would then bear the cost of that election. If it was a Wyandotte County wide election where all eligible voters could participate, then there would not be any additional cost for like putting something on a March ballot where there wasn't already a question being proposed. But because there's a constitutional amendment in August and one in November and all these other elections, there's no costs associated for either one of those dates. I will say that there is a pretty substantial staff lift on ballot questions in terms of getting information together. You know, certainly staff doesn't advocate for it, but in terms of getting information and providing information out. So when the public safety infrastructure sales tax was renewed several years ago, it did require a lot of staff time, a lot of our communications staff time, and making sure that various parts of the community had access to that information, that elected officials had the information requests that they had. So I just do want to recognize that there is a substantial amount of staff time that goes into any ballot initiative. And then I think it was mentioned to others, we don't know what the priorities would be for an incoming elected and mayor and what their desires would be. So there is time between December when those new folks come in and June to decide whether there was a direction that they wanted to go, or if you all decided you wanted to move forward with it, then they could come back and adjust that during that period as well.
I'm sorry, I might have misheard. So our newly elected folks will be sworn in like December, correct?
15th.
I thought I heard you say June.
Yeah, no, June is the deadline for anything to be on the ballot for
Okay.
August. So they would have between that December when they're sworn in and June
Okay,
to make any decisions about what was going to go on to an August ballot.
okay.
And they would have until
I
September. to
didn't
go on
quite
to a
hear it
November ballot.
correctly. Thank you very much. Thanks. Appreciate it. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I guess I see this as kind of a different take, colleagues, on the sales tax. We've spent hours upon hours upon hours understanding the depth and the need of our current budget woes. So and it's just my opinion, to place that on a new commission with a new mayor and at least three new commissioners to get caught up and then get comfortable with putting something on the ballot that same year in their first year might be quite a tall task. Quite frankly, I don't know if I would have been comfortable with doing something like that my first year, because there's just a lot that you don't know. Now, if we were to place this on the ballot, again, it doesn't mean it passes, it doesn't mean it fails, but it does guarantee that it's an option. And if newer colleagues came in and said, we don't like it, like any other resident, they could advocate against it, advocate for it, or vote it down. But we have 50 hours plus worth of current budgetary knowledge that we can use to make a decision that will give our community an option to say, do you want to make the investment or not? And we can do that this year and put the community, put the future commission in a position where there will be something different that budget year that would take place. Something different that year that could alleviate some of these problems. We all know the issues of our infrastructure, of our parks, closed bridges. None of those realities change just because we have new colleagues that would be on the board. If anything, they're probably going to be exacerbated. They're probably going to be more expensive. And so my worry in waiting is the time it's going to take for new folks to get acquainted, to learn, be comfortable, and then the time that it takes for staff to understand, to engage, to really do a robust job. I think if we were to put this on the ballot in an August or even a November ballot for next year, it would at the very least send to the full commission for full consideration. Obviously, we have colleagues that need to take this on as well. But it would at the very least, if we decided what to do and gave the full commission a chance, we would then give more time in the event we all agreed to put this on the ballot. We would give more time for community engagement. And it would be, quite frankly, close to a year to prepare and to educate and to really dive deep into what this could do. This could take on a lot of the capital cost, and it could alleviate the reliance that we currently have on property taxes. I mean, that's a real thing. It might not be a abating of taxes, but it could be a shifting of where we are drawing from, the revenues that we are drawing from to improve our parks, to open our bridges, to repair our potholes, to build new and renovate police and fire stations and what have you. And so we've done a lot this budget cycle. I'm just trying to get as much as we can out of the 50 plus hours we have sat in this room. And that would be the reason why I would be comfortable with sending this to the full commission. Don't know if that resonates with anybody else, but that's just my position. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Commissioner Kane.
Well, I hadn't been around for very long, but we made a purchase of some radios that were very expensive. And one of the commissioners came in and said that he would have never voted for something like that. He would have never worked on it for that. And this put firemen and policemen at hazard, right? And to be perfectly honest about it, my son was a rookie fireman when this happened. You know, and that particular commissioner pushed that probably 4 or 5 budgets about wasteful money. And he was a good guy, but he was wrong. You know, and I think that we could have entrees and the new mayor, for sure, the 3 new commissioners can be brought up to snuff about what's going on, because it would be easy for somebody to say, well, I didn't know anything about it. And you're right, we worked on this a lot. And I agree we need to do it, but I think they need to be involved to say, here's where we want some of this to go. And then that's just my opinion. You know, I would be a little upset if I came in and had to do that, but no matter what, and you know this, when you get here, it's different than what you thought, and there's always something new. I mean, we had to deal with COVID and everything else. So we have to, the commission will have to make adjustments. That's just my thought.
I appreciate that. So I appreciate where Commissioner Davis is coming from. And from your comments, I'm trying to craft a way forward now, while also recognizing that we will have new faces and we will need to bring them up to speed as quickly as possible with an understanding of why we feel a sense of urgency around it. So with that in mind, is there a suggestion on what we would move forward tonight? Commissioner Kane suggested maybe it's, a series of on three discussions, and I don't disagree with that. Because it seems to me like if we were to move something forward tonight, it would be something very general that would still require a lot of discussion and fine tuning, because we'd want to decide, are we talking about a 0.375 for a specific thing? Are we talking about a full percent for a general thing? I mean, there's a lot yet to determine. So just looking for guidance, or no motion is no movement on this item yet again, which I'm okay with. But my request and desire would be that if we don't do that, which I'm okay with, that we do, JD, maybe ask the mayor to put 2 or 3 commissioners on this to round out what it would look like. What would we be asking for? Because we are going to have to work on it with the community. We're going to have to explain to the community, why would it be helpful? And I, again, say that one of the benefits of the sales tax is that it's paid for by people who do not live here. And I think that is beneficial, that to me, it spreads that cost out among many, many more people. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Anybody got a Commissioner Kane?
Well, I think it's a great idea that they round up some commissioners and they educate the new commissioners, and thank you for volunteering.
I was kind of also thinking of Commissioner Davis. And I say that sincerely.
Absolutely. One, it'll sound better. I would never disrespect staff, but it'll sound better coming from one, you've been here from the beginning of this, and explain to them, here's what we need. And sometimes it just sounds better coming from one of the people you're working with. But once again, thank you for volunteering.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I was hoping we would decide on something tonight and we would do on threes, maybe figure something out. But that's fine. I think as long as we keep the discussion going, obviously we have the election coming up, and I have an election coming up in November. And so maybe around that time afterwards, where we know where things stand, we can then kind of take the temperature. And heck, if you're a commissioner-elect, I was involved in a lot of meetings as being a commissioner-elect. And so I don't see why not getting some of those folks to engage as quickly as they can to be involved. So, yeah.
Mr. House.
Yeah, Alan House, Assistant Administrator. And I think maybe staff could be helpful in that, not to volunteer our CFO, but I think like working with her, I think so our legal team has identified kind of what is available under current state law. But I think we could then take that down another level or two and say, okay, what are the options? What are the things? Again, we have Central and Kansas Avenue bridges hanging out here that there's no identified dedicated funding source that is likely going to be required in order to get any local traction on that. Is that something that you want to right into this. So there's other sort of issues that we've heard and that you all have identified that we could then begin to kind of put those together and say, how would you all and how would a future commission like to begin to address that? And what is a sort of a financial plan, as the next step in this look like? Because the other part is, sales tax is more volatile. So I think we just have to keep that in mind.
Right.
And then when a sales tax funded activity falls short, what buttresses it is property tax.
Right.
So when the EMS sales tax doesn't come in as expected, but that service still has to be delivered, what is supporting it is property taxes. And that has happened before. And so I think, again, just sort of keeping that in mind. And we have people also that we're paying for out of our public safety and infrastructure sales tax. And so sales tax in some ways maybe better aimed at capital needs because that variability doesn't affect the bodies that are in those seats. So again, that's sort of all of the sort of financial strategy and lining that up against some of the priorities that the commission are clearly identified through the budget process and other places, and begin to kind of lay that out and see how you all would want to move forward with that.
And I would be willing to be a part of this smaller group of commissioners and perhaps maybe 2 more commissioners from the other 2 standing committees, ED&F and Public Works and Safety. Would that be satisfactory for moving us? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I like that idea of us just, let's get past this election, and then start teaching, preparing the new mayor, new commissioners for what's happening, and then have this working group going. But I agree with ACA House. When we do this, I think we need to bring forward a well thought out and robust tax proposal, to not just to us as the governing body, but to our community, a robust tax proposal that they will be proud of. And I think that's the biggest thing that we need to bring pride behind of what we're doing. We're doing this to make our community better. And I think it's a good way to move forward from here.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Hill, any thoughts? I don't think you've weighed in on this one.
Did a little bit. I definitely see the benefit in having the sales tax and would enthusiastically vote for it. However, I also know that just hearing during this budget cycle and last year's budget cycle, our constituents constantly saying no more tax increases. So that is the only reason that is kind of holding me back a little bit, where I'm definitely in favor of the infrastructure opportunities, all the benefits that definitely could happen. It's still a tax. But the benefit, I think, of this conversation is just knowing that it's not just up to us. The community would have a chance to vote on it. It would be in the election. So that takes a little bit of the pressure off. So I want to make sure that it's recorded that though I am a little hesitant, I definitely realize the benefit of what this could do for our community. And I think if we do what we say we're going to do, I think that's what really makes the difference in our community. Because I just believe, just down through the years, we have said we're going to do one thing and something happens and then we didn't get it done. And so That is my only real concern. But thank you for this opportunity to just hear from me and for me to think out loud. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Hill. Appreciate that. Is there any motion on this item? If no motion, then we will not have an item move forward to the full commission, but that doesn't mean we can't keep discussing and forming a small committee. I apologize. Is there anyone who has joined us online that would like to speak to the item, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised.
And is there anyone who notified us in writing about this item?
No comments were received.
Is there anyone here in person who would like to speak about this item? Thank you so much. Okay, now, if there's no action, that's fine. We'll make a plan to converse about it another way. Thank you very much. We need to go back to item 1. And Ruth Jones, thank you so kindly for your patience while we made our way through these other items. But we do have an item that needs consideration, and that is a resolution on your area agency on aging master plan. So thank you for joining us, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Ruth Jones, Aging Director. I first would like to apologize for some conflicting information that we had and on attendance of this meeting tonight. And I also would like to say that I'm a caregiver, so I had some caregiver conflicts going on. So I apologize for that up front.
Not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you. I will go into what the area plan is, and if you could go ahead to the next slide. The area plan, exactly what it says. It's a comprehensive federally mandated 4-year strategic plan created by each of the Kansas area agencies on aging. It's basically a budget plan that details how we will provide essential services to adults in our designated regions. It's one of the reasons why you hear the area agencies on aging referred to as planning services area. 01. So in Kansas, Planning Service Area 01 is Wyandotte Leavenworth. We're funded by the Older Americans Act, so those are federal dollars, and it just outlines our 4-year plan for how we're going to implement those services, such as the components that we're required to, which is information and referral or access, community and in-home services, nutrition, transportation, and caregiver support. The area plan follows the state plan. So basically, the state comes out with their state plan for the entire state, and then the area plan picks up on those plans the state outlines and creates our own regional plans and goals to provide services. The 11 area agencies on aging, while we use the same federal dollars, you will, if you visit one area agency on aging, you visited one area agency on aging, because we're allowed to plan our services to retrofit the community. So even with our sub-grantee, the Council on Aging, they're more rural and their plan fits and more outlines goals that they have and for a more rural area. With us being more urban and densely populated, our plan will differ from theirs. And also going factors that go into the area plan or that we have to, it requires community input. So during the preparation of the area plan, there are public hearings that are required to be held. There also, we have to put the area plan past our advisory council and they are allowed to review it. It's a 115-page document, and the chair of the advisory also signs off on the area plan. There also is a required 30-day comment period where, as the community seniors are involved to make comments or provide input on the plan. And also in the life of the plan, there may be revisions. So if there are new services we add, or if there are funding cuts, we have to revise a portion of the area plan and resubmit it back through our legal for a new signature. And that about does it. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. My question, I think, is for legal. Is it a plan that is open for public view? Is it a public document?
This
It
is
is.
Zip from the Unified Government Legal Department. Commissioner, I believe that the plan is open for public view, especially because community input is part of the plan. So there are public hearings that are conducted for this. Now, maybe Ruth can correct me if I'm wrong about that.
That's absolutely correct. I'm sorry, Ruth Jones, Aging Director. That's correct. We do have 2 public hearings that are held before the plans are submitted. And I also mentioned that there is a 30-day public comment session, and we completed that 30-day period this past July. As well, our advisory council are allowed to review and provide a comment. But at the public hearings, we have seniors and public at large that can come in, and we share the services we're providing, and they're able to add comment. And this information is documented and also submitted with our area plan.
Thank you so much. Questions or comments? Any clerk, any comments received by the public?
No comments were received.
Is there anyone with their hand up online?
There are no hands raised online.
Is there anyone here in person that would like to speak to the item? Okay, Commissioner Kane.
Your requestion for the for fast track, but does it have to be this Thursday? Can it be the following Thursday?
Z, go ahead.
This is Z Bishop again with UG Legal Department. Commissioner, the reason that this has been requested for a fast track is because we are up against a state deadline. And in fact, I think we have missed the state deadline for getting this turned in. And so we're wanting to get it done as quickly as possible.
Motion to fast track this item.
To the September 25.
Yep.
Okay.
Davis, second.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second with a fast track to this Thursday's meeting. Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jones. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
And with that,
Davis, second.
we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Hill,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Vote is 5-0. Motion carries.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you all.